This is the day we left Cape Town about a month ago, on the 1st of May as a matter of fact, and you probably, if you were there, saw this picture, and if you didn't, you certainly saw it on the videos that Stuart Dawes put together for us, which was fantastic. So what happened since then? It's been a month, and we said we were going to upload videos every week. It didn't work out that way for a very good reason. The sea just sort of decided to get in the way. Our first port of call was Dassen Island. We decided because really Neil, this was his first time out, we'd try to give him a fairly easy ride. We didn't expect the bouncy, choppy, messy sea that we had. We certainly didn't expect the overcast conditions as well. But we left the helm to do the work because the order helm worked extremely well. And off we went. When we finally got to Dassen Island late that afternoon, in fact early evening, we discovered that the lighthouse wasn't working. When it did try to work, it sort of came on fitfully, and it was certainly not a thing that we would try to enter any little harbour or cove with. So we decided instead to pull the sails down and just wait it out, which is not comfortable. The boat rolls around in the dark and you keep a watch to make sure you're not getting run down by the big ships that are around. We didn't see too many of them, but you take it easy. Early next morning we got up and we decided we were going to motor towards Dassen Island because there was not a scrap of wind. Well, not where we were anyway. We'd already overdrifted the island itself, and when we looked back we could see Dassen Island over there. But it very rapidly got engulfed by fog, heavy fog. It came rolling in as we motored towards it. So now what do? We were both pretty darn tired, having stayed awake the whole night, keeping watch. So we decided to do something that I would not normally do, and that is to use the GPS and the autopilot to steer away in blind. And it was risky. Dassen Island is shaped a bit like a boomerang. And if you can imagine that we were in the lee of the boomerang, that's where we wanted to be, right in that little crux there, where the island lighthouse is, and there's a small settlement there as well, at least the lighthouse keeper's settlement. We tiptoed in darkness. Well, not really, it was a sort of foggy darkness, if you can imagine that. We could have been in a little bowl of cotton wool, and there was no way that you could see either to left or right, forward or aft. There were times when we couldn't even see the jib on the boat. So we motored in very, very gently and very carefully, watching the depth sounder, which we'd strapped to the side of the boat, and we tiptoed in this foggy bowl, as I say. Eventually, when the depth sounder said the right thing, when the GPS said the right thing, we said, okay, this is where we drop the anchor, and might just as well have been dropping anchor in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Down went the anchor, and after a few moments it became apparent that it wasn't holding. So we had to haul the darn thing up again, put it down again, and then back off a little bit to get the anchor set. When eventually the clouds and the fog lifted, we discovered we were in the absolute best place we could have been. We weren't too far from shore, we could see it very clearly, we weren't close enough to be in any danger, and in fact, this tranquil sea around us was idyllic. It was amazing. It looked almost like a crayon painting that somebody had done of a lighthouse and a little house where the lighthouse keeper lived. So we were quite happy with that. We had a quiet day, we tried a bit of lobster fishing, got absolutely nothing at all, but it didn't really matter. Neil unfortunately also was going through a bit of a problem. He had a very bad cough indeed, and it was very clear that something had to be done about it. He put himself onto a course of antibiotics, and he took a second course immediately afterwards. But we were really debating, do we hang on to the coast in case it gets worse, and perhaps put in at either Saldanha or Luderitz or somewhere and see if we can't get him some medical attention, because it looked like something that may be serious. Anyway, we finally left after a day and decided we were going to motor off again and sail off because there was a little bit of wind coming. But most importantly, the reason we left was that we had a note from Larry, our redoubtable weatherman, from the satellite phone to say that there was a wind change coming, and it was going to come from the north, which meant that we would have been on a lee shore. We'd have been in the danger of being swept up onto the beach if our anchor dragged. So off we set again, wrapped up in wet weather gear because it was not particularly pleasant. It was overcast and dark and stumpy sea, and it was tiring, to put it mildly. And off we went. We sailed off until we eventually arrived at Saldanha and decided we better go in and go and relax again, because we were by that time totally knackered. A very friendly yacht club greeted us. We met some lovely people there. They were very kind to us. They said please anchor forward and aft, pretty much the Mediterranean style. We were knackered. We simply went alongside and they didn't seem to mind. And we went alongside a pier, met some nice people, tried a few things, looked around and sort of slowly tried to gather a little bit of attention to looking after our health. Because, as I say, it was so exhausting, so tiring in that weather, and watching endless watches. After 2 days at Saldanha and getting a bit of water on board, which is the worst tasting water we've ever noted in our lives, it was so bad we eventually could only use it for washing, washing dishes and so on. But it smelled awful. Never mind. We decided to head off again, and this time to head towards St Helena, which was about 1,300 miles away. It sounds like not that far. If you're driving a car, it's not, but in a boat it's about 3 weeks, which is a long way. So off we went, and we went straight into the heaviest seas we'd seen so far. They were all over the place. We got banged around and hammered and all the rest of it, and during the course of it, one of the pulleys let go, the steering pulleys let go, and our steering jammed. That had the immediate effect of switching off the auto helm because it couldn't push against it, so we had to stop in the middle of the ocean. Fortunately, we had plenty of shore on either side of us, open one of the cockpits, get into the actual bowels of the boat, and get that cable back online, back onto the pulley, which after a bit of labour and hard sweat we did. But remembering too, this is taking it out of your energy levels and it's sapping you. When we finally got going again, we hit more cloudy weather. Now, what's the effect of that? Cloudy weather is not a problem at all, except that you have a problem when it comes to the fact that the engine was being charged by a photovoltaic cell. In fact, two panels of photovoltaic cells. It was getting no charge at all, until eventually the battery finally depleted, ran out. And now we were stuck with our biggest fear to begin with, the idea that we'd have to helm 24/7. Didn't please either of us, to put it very mildly, but what do? Off you go. We went straight off to a watch system where Rusty would helm for 4 hours, I would helm for 4 hours, and then we would just switch and switch about. It means that our sleep patterns were down to about 2.5 hours, because by the time you got to sleep and then you have to wake up again. And it was, I think, also very effective on me, because not only was Rusty steering, but he needed to call me if there was anything likely that needed my attention. Ships close by or something going wrong with the sails or whatever it might be. So I felt myself feeling it in no uncertain terms. We finally arrived at St Helena. Not without incident. We lost the steering altogether along the way again, a second time, and unfortunately the auto helm blew up. On the strength of it, it simply stopped working at all. So the last 3 days of helming was in no wind, overcast conditions, and we simply had to decide what are we going to do. We're going to sit out here and wait for the wind. We were absolutely shattered by then. I had lost a huge amount of weight, so had Rusty, and we decided the hell with it. Turn on the engine again, and we lumbered our way in. We saw the island of St Helena some 30 miles away from the sea, which is extraordinary, but there was a very high light on the island, and we could see it if we knew where to look. The GPS was a great help on that one. And so we battled our way in, threw the anchor down in St Helena. Well, we know we didn't. We picked up a mooring in St Helena, and well, I thought our troubles were over. I thought at least now we can get a good night's sleep, except that you have to clear customs and immigration. And when we contacted customs and immigration, they said, please won't you come ashore and do that. Oh, fine, okay. So now we have to get the dinghy over. So these two shattered, tired old guys decided to get the dinghy over, and Neil was working below decks when I went to undo the dinghy, and I fell overboard. Well, you can't believe what a shock that was. I went backwards over the side, straight into the water. That woke me up, no end. It wasn't dangerous in the sense that the wind wasn't blowing that hard, but I managed to just sort of drift around and hang on close to the boat and get over to the stern. I gave Rusty a yell, and he came to give me a hand out, and there was no way he could get me out. No way I could pull myself up. I was absolutely exhausted. And so finally, I said to Rusty, just get a piece of rope, put a loop in it, and put a knot in it, and tie it to the side, and let's lower that, and I've got at least a foothold to be able to lift myself up. And after a lot of sweating and trying, we finally managed to haul me aboard. Then it was a matter of saying, okay, get hold of the water ferry people. And we didn't know how to do that, but we found a way. And the guys came across in a little boat to collect us and take us ashore. That's when we decided to go and see the angel of the island, Hazel Wilmot, and she took one look at us both, these two old wrecks, and she said, no way, you're not going back to the boat, you're staying here at the hotel as our guests. So we have a huge debt of thanks to say to Hazel, and well, we've been here for about a week and a bit now, and sort of slowly recovering our health. I don't look quite like the scruffball I did when I got here. It's been an interesting voyage. So, you're asking yourself, what are we going to do next? Well, I suppose the answer really is to say that we've heard from a number of people that the hardest part of the passage is over. We had a really rough ride, no question about it. When I think back to Anthony Duke saying to me, Mel, enough now, come on and have a beer, I couldn't agree more. That's what we should have done. But we're here now. We're in the 1,600 miles into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and loving St Helena once again. And the next video will talk about the island itself and what we've seen. However, one final word before we leave this particular patch of video, and that is to say, what did we see when I said that we were going to look at the ocean? Has it changed? How's it changed? Are there things I can compare to what happened originally? Yes, there are. There are a few. The first is that the sea marine life, the bird life, seems to be as robust as ever. We saw plenty of birds in various sizes and kestrels and, no, not kestrels, what I'm talking about, but we saw albatross, the small ones, not the big ones, and any number of frigate birds and so on. What I didn't see was more than one flying fish, and that's very scary because flying fish are prolific around here. They fly in droves, huge numbers of them. We saw in the whole time we were afloat one dolphin, only one, came up, smiled at us and beetled off again. That's very different to the first time. 35 years ago we had lots of sea life around us. Is it indicative of anything at all? Of course not. It's simply a subjective view. But that's one of the things that I did promise that I would do in the course of what we're doing. So there you are. That's it. We're here. We're in St Helena. Thank you to Hazel Wilmot. Thank you to the Consulate Hotel. And this is the foyer of the Consulate Hotel. Right outside is the main street. Truth be told, it's the only street, but we don't mind. We've loved the island, we've enjoyed it enormously, and we won't be too long here before we set off again, this time for the West Indies, and hopefully in time to beat the hurricane season.